had put 32 hours behind the wheel, and I was agitated.
All right, James, you
All
got
right.
a 2-hour tape, and whenever you're ready.
Okay. So we're on? Okay. We're talking today with Michael Yocum of Grand Rapids, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Yocum, can you begin with a little bit of background on yourself? To start with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Seattle, Washington, raised basically in the Mount St. Helens area, so you could kind of pinpoint location. I joined the Air Force right out of high school. Joined with the thought that, we have so many people wanting to be a mechanic, you got a 6-month wait. Except the testing they give everybody coming into service. My low score was 75, which is 10 points above the hardest field to get in. My 6 months was 23 hours.
Okay, let's back up a little bit and fill in a little more of the background here. What did your family do for a living while you were growing up?
That's an area I don't get into.
Okay. Let's see. What motivated your decision to enlist in the Air Force?
Only 2 services had jet aircraft, fighters. Air Force or Navy. Sorry, too many relatives with brass. I ain't going in no place where I'm going to run into a cousin and an uncle that's an officer. You get hit with a feather or a brick, and you never know which one's flying. So, Navy would not guarantee me that I would get what I had asked for. The Air Force gave me a signed contract that I would get this field. All I had to do was pass the school, okay, which I did.
All right, but you saw going into the service as sort of the best way to get to work on jets, and that was the
only way you was going to do it. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the tech schools that you got today. Okay. Back in '62.
All right, so '62 is when you enlist. So you take the test, and you said with the expectation that you get some time before they actually took you in.
I signed the 6-month or delayed enlistment. Forgot to read the fine line at the bottom, or to the needs of the service.
So you're in right away.
Yeah, they woke the recruiter up. They didn't have all this fancy equipment we got today. They called him and told him, get up, go over, get me, and get me down to Portland, Oregon to ship out.
All right. So was Portland just a place to process you? Or?
Yeah, it's a major military processing center. They took, let's see, everybody except Coast Guard went through that. I mean, that's where you went down and had all your physical. That's where you went down to get your assigned to whatever jet was taking you to wherever you was going. Mine, the Air Force is all Lackland. I mean, it hasn't changed. And from the time I went in to the time my son went in, he went down to Lackland and I went to his graduation. It was 37 years and hadn't changed, except they got better barracks than we did.
All right. So Lackland is down in San Antonio.
San Antonio, Texas.
Okay.
And I got done with boot camp, which to me at the time, as I said, I was a former athlete. I was in top shape. Boot camp was a lark.
Okay. Now, in the Air Force, did they pay much attention to just military discipline and learning to follow orders?
It can be a lark, but there is, and you always will have discipline. There is no goof off or anything. You learn to be military. After I got done with boot camp in San Antonio, I went to Amarillo Air Force Base, which is gone, for my training as a jet aircraft mechanic. And I went in for fighters. They also had the heavies, 3 or more engines on the aircraft, and SAC tried to get me to switch over, and I told them, no, I want fighters, I don't want bombers.
Okay. But they let you make a choice, or?
You're in school. I had a contract saying that I would get this. Mm-hmm. And they still have the same contract today. The Air Force will give you a written contract. but you got to fill your end of it for them to do their end.
Right. Okay. Now, describe a little bit what the training consisted of. What were you doing there?
You was working on basically trainer aircraft. In other words, for some reason they're not flyable, but they're good for somebody to learn how to repair them. You take them apart, you put them back together. Needless to say, some of the parts are kind of wore out. Many times they come on and off. You go through sections. You have a section. Start with the basic section, which is the aerodynamics of an aircraft. And why it does what it does, how it does what it does. You get that, and then it's just a building step.
So you get classroom work as well as
you get
hands-on?
classroom and what you would call the theory, and then you get the practical. You put your hand on it and do it.
All right. Now, were you working on the same kinds of aircraft that they would actually use in combat missions, or
No,
were these just the trainers?
These are junkers.
Okay.
They've either had a hard landing and cracked a spar or cracked some. They're not flyable, but they're usable.
Mm-hmm.
And we started off on the old P80, F80, which is the T-30, was the first jet aircraft Air Force inventory. And we had that one, we had a 100, and I think a 101 at that period. But each one of these had main spar crack or keel crack, something you could not repair to make it flyable. But you could park it for a guy to go climb on and up and over and
Right.
around. Then I completed school at Amarillo,
Right.
San Antonio, Amarillo. Then I got assigned to my first base, which was Glasgow Air Force Base, Montana. SAC.
So you got
Fighter
there.
mechanics don't have good SAC appetites.
Well, if you're going to a SAC base, then were there any fighters there at all?
Yes, there was. I was going to what they call transit alert. I take care of the airplanes coming into base, non-base aircraft. And most of them were fighters, transit from the West Coast going east or east going west. And that place was out of the way, but a perfect drop-off spot.
All right. Now, how long did you stay there?
I was there approximately 18 months,
All right.
and I escaped.
Okay. Well, what was life like there? Was it like having just a regular day job, or?
No. I worked 12 on, 36 off. I even had better ones than that, but that's further down. But transit alert, you got to have a crew there that's alert and ready to go on the moment. It's like they say with a fireman, many hours of twiddling your thumbs and then going crazy getting things done. One of the jobs I had to do while I was in transit alert, take our follow me truck out and bring in the B-52 drag chutes. They only weigh 600 pounds. So we had other jobs, you just didn't sit around. And I had an excellent group of guys I was working with. We got along real good. From there, I went to RAF Bentwaters, Great Britain, and that's where I learned real quick. In Europe, when they say Sunday drivers, get away from him fast as you can, because they could only afford to drive 1 day a week. This guy went to the beach, got too tired, and instead of wait until the next morning, he tried making it home, and I'd come up one side of the hill, he's coming up the other, and we met at the top on my lane.
So what happened to you at that point?
Well, I kissed the steering wheel and nuzzled the windshield. 14 major fractures of the face, 12 in the lower jaw, 2 in the upper. I was really a mess.
And how long did they have you in the hospital?
2 months. I was blessed in the thing is, I was at a training. They had to send me to a civilian hospital because they didn't have anything at that base and didn't have time to ship me to the main one, Lake and Heath, because I was that badly messed up in the face. And I went to, I can't even think of the name of the hospital, but Dr. Gay, the gentleman who put my face back there, that was his specialty. From the shoulders up. And he happened to come in and check on one patient, and I only remember little bits of that night. I remember him come looking at me and pointing his finger. He's mine. Have him ready for me tomorrow morning. And I'm thinking, who's this idiot? You know, I'm in pain. I'm hurting. And they couldn't lay me down. I had to sit on the gurney because when they lay me down, the bones would move, and that was pain. I had 2 cops tried to do that at the accident site, and I threw them about 20 feet. They got the idea I didn't want to lay down. And Dr. Gay really put my face back together. I only lost 2 teeth in the accident, but because of the accident, through the years, my upper jaw, I got 4 teeth left. Lower jaw, I've got 8 out of the 16.
And you've had to be careful with facial injuries or anything like that.
I don't dare have a facial injury. I don't get in a situation where I can. I've had to give up a few things. I like riding horses. I love it. You gotta remember, you're sitting on 1,000 pounds of skittish material. Even the best that can be frightened. And, well, I don't want to go fly into the ground.
Okay. Now, how did the Air Force respond to this? Did they want to just get you back in, or were they concerned that maybe this would end your career?
No, the Air Force checked, and they sent a specialist down there and checked. And since I was Dr. Gay patient, he wasn't going to sign me off till he says I was safe to go back. And the Air Force couldn't have got a good treatment for me at Lake and Heath because they didn't have the quality of surgeon. You know, so I didn't say it wasn't going to be bad. It just quality where I ended up.
Right.
He rebuilt my face. Still, the only way you could tell there was damage if you see a picture of before the accident to one after the accident. You could see a change in the structure. But I spent 2 months in the hospital, come out. I was on 6 months of light duty. They wouldn't let me go into a hangar. They didn't want no falls. And around airplanes, you got fuel, oil, hydraulic fluids. You step in that and you're gone. You escape.
So what did you do for those 6 months?
Take care of tech orders. File the changes. Tedium to the point of tearing your hair out. So then from Great Britain, I went to, the name escapes me. It's in Montgomery, Alabama. There's an air base there. It's strictly an officer's training base. I work transit alert. And this is where you've got better duty than the first one. I work 24 hours on, 72 hours off, 1 work day a month off. So I had a 7-day period where I didn't even report into duty.
So how do you spend your time then when you're not on duty?
Middle 20s, good car, open road. What do you think I did?
You had a good time.
Had a blast. It was one of those things. And then when I was there, I volunteered for Vietnam, They turned it down. Had to volunteer 3 times before they took from Maxwell. That's the name of it,
yeah.
Maxwell Air Force Base. It also has a federal penitentiary on the back side of it. We got locked down several times when somebody got out.
Okay. Well, if you're working with an officers' training facility, well, aside from the officers who were your relatives, did you have any issues with officers or?
No, in fact, that caused me to view officers as persons and not entities. Once a month we had a Code 7 fly-in day. Code 7 means that's a full colonel and above.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else, we parked them in the Outback 40. Took care of them when we could. Because they'd come in for conferences, they'd fly in. In fact, that was the one time I had got to see a real F-80. He'd come in from Mexico. He came in hot. That means guns loaded, rockets armed. We had to call an army base, a missile base, to send somebody down to de-arm the aircraft. We all stood out there trying to figure out, it looks like a T-33, but it doesn't look like it. What the? Well, F-80 was what they took the T-33 off. T-33 2-seater training aircraft. This was the original.
This is an original 1950s model aircraft? Yeah.
Yeah. Right out of Mexico.
All right. So you're...
Then...
do you have any idea why they were turning down your request to go to Vietnam?
They just didn't want to replace. They got somebody good there. They try to hold you there as long as...
Okay. Now, what motivated you to volunteer for Vietnam?
I knew I was going to have to go. Instead of being grabbed and having, say, non-volunteer status, you want volunteer status when you're going someplace like that. From Maxwell, I spent 3 months at Clovis Air Force Base, Clovis, New Mexico, learning the F-100, the worst airplane ever. Went over from Clovis, I went over to Phan, September. They almost totally turn a squadron over in a 1 month period. Not everybody goes at once. You start with your ground crew, you get them out, and the new ground crew, and the NCOs, those in charge, train the ground crews. When we're all trained and know what we're doing, they change them, then they go to the officers after that.
Okay. You mentioned that the F-100 was kind of a challenge to work on. Tell me a little bit about what the problems were, or what made it different from other aircraft to work on.
Most aircraft, you change the main tire, you slide the wheel over the brake. F-100, you put the wheel on and then slide the brake in, attach the hydraulic system, bleed the hydraulic system. So a main tire change, you're talking an hour and a quarter of work. Now when I worked on the 101, 25 minutes and I was done.
Mm-hmm. And were there a lot of different things like that?
Oh, you don't want to even know about taking the aft section off to fix the engine. You know, most aircraft, you drop it down from the engine bay. The F-100, you got to take the tail section off.
Was the F-100 sort of the first of its general design type?
It was the first of the serious dedicated fighters. This is the first one with afterburner. Oh, sure, they had speed brakes. Almost all except for the F-80, had speed brakes because of the speed they was going at. But the 100 was the first one with an afterburner in it. This is a kick in the butt when you wanted to move. You went into AB and you took off, but you used copious amounts of fuel to do it. So if you used it with caution. And the crew I was with, we got to the point where we'd have to do an aft section off And you know how in working outfits you get somebody, a good crew that does this better than anybody else, you have them doing that. And people would watch us and they'd think it was a Chinese fire drill because, well, my first job was to get on the back of the aircraft right over the spine and put the engine hanger in and move it around till they pinned it. So the engine wouldn't roll out of the aircraft. People get upset when engines go kaboom.
Yeah.
We each knew our jobs. One was because I had the strength and power to do it back then, was to break the 4 nuts loose that held the aft section on. Then after we got it all back together again, my job was to torque them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you saw my name on the torque box, you knew it was torqued. It took 3,000 foot-pounds, not inch. To get a foot-pound, it takes 144 inch-pounds. And we had 3,000 foot-pounds. Car tire, 60 to 80 inch-pounds, and it's torqued.
Now, how could you know that you had it properly torqued or got it
You
burned?
had a torque wrench,
Okay.
and it clicks when it's torqued.
Ah, all right. Okay. So now we're going to try to follow the story here. So you got, how much of this stuff did you learn at Clovis while you were there? Did you have?
Just enough to be a quick whitewash, because you was there to learn the aircraft, learn some of the idiosyncrasies of it, and to get you over there where you could be working and training the same.
Right. Okay. Now, how did they get you over to Vietnam?
Flew me.
Okay. Military aircraft, commercial?
Commercial aircraft leased to the military. That was an 18-hour flight. He was in that airplane for 18 hours, and this one it was a 707, not a 747, something like that. And it was packed.
Now, were they all Air Force personnel in this case?
Military personnel.
Generally.
Cameron was the dispersal point. In other words, everybody come in to Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
You deplane. Air Force guys here, Army here, Navy here, Marines there. The other 3, I don't know what happened to them. It's just, you knew, they would tell you, if you're Air Force, you go over here.
Do you remember just getting off that plane at Cameron when you first landed, or was that just kind of a blur?
No, we got off it, stepped into a sauna bath. High moisture, high heat. Kind of used to it. I grew up in that type of climate on the Pacific coast there in Washington State. A dry day is 60 to 65% humidity, so, you know.
Yeah, and Alabama can get pretty warm too.
Alabama was nothing. But I went from Alabama, so I'm, used to heat and moisture to that. I did my year in Phan. Just a great bunch of guys to work with.
All right. Now, what unit were you assigned to at Phan?
352, Attack Fighter Squadron.
All right. And were they flying F-100s at that time?
Yep, nothing else on that base except the OV-10s. That's the FAC aircraft with the pusher-puller propeller system. Engine in front, engine in back, twin booms on the tail.
And those were observation aircraft? Or?
Yeah, they went in, they dropped markers on Charlie, and then the 100s come in. While I was there, I saw 5 or 6 times we loaded in some daisy cutters. What this is a 1,000-pound bomb with a 16-foot fuse out front. So when that bomb gets in 2 inches of the ground, it goes boom. There's no hole. Just everything any higher than 2 inches, it's gone for 1,500-foot radius from the impact point. So you got a 1,000-foot diameter.
Now, would that take out trees or just?
Anything. It was made to get rid of, make an opening in the jungle for
Right.
a chopper to drop in.
Right. So when you create a landing zone,
You
use
create
those.
it.
Yeah. All right.
While I was there, we had a high priority. We had to get some landing zones. We knew an North Vietnamese army group was in the jungle somewhere. We found them. Serendipitously, the spot we chose to drop the 3 daisy cutters, they were right in the middle of the 3 daisy cutters, so you could see there wasn't much left but a sponge job. Army flew in, oops, job done, flew out. But it was just pure chance that nobody even knew where they were.
Okay. Now let's sort of go back to let's go to the arrival. You get to Phan Rang. How did they get you out to Phan Rang from Cam Ranh?
C-131s.
Okay.
And they load you on, hop you over, and drop you off.
Okay. And physically describe the base at Phan Rang. How big was it? What did it look like?
It was a pretty good size. Nowadays, mid-sized base. We had an emergency runway, which is the flight runways they built when they get things in there. Then we had a concrete runway, had taxiways and stuff.
Okay. How much do you have fortifications or defenses surrounding the base?
We had 3 layers of fencing, and every one of them were covered with razor concertina wire. This is wire you could have a heavy leather glove on it and slice through it and you as soon as you grabbed it.
And did you have Army troops or somebody guarding
Oh yeah,
the perimeter?
we had Army troops there. You would wake up at night when they stopped firing the 105s. When it goes quiet, you get worried. One of the first things we did, the group I was with in the 352nd, enlisted people, we looked at our bunker and we took one look at it and says, that's not safe. So we sat down and did some head banging and we designed ours and we built ours. It could take a 105 direct hit and not collapse.
So what were you able to do by way of modifying it to make it stronger?
Well, we tore it down.
Okay.
Took 2 50-gallon barrels, cut the ends out, welded them together so you got 6 foot. Big enough for me because I'm only 5'6". You fill that barrel with sand. On each side of it, you have 2 bags, double width of sandbag. One layer goes this way, next layer 90 degrees. Any openings you fill with sand. Now, when we got to the roof section, we got some of the old planking that was not good enough for aircraft, but good enough to hold stuff. We covered the whole top and did the exact same thing again over the top.
So the planking, that's the metal sheeting they use
It's
for the
a
runways?
honeycomb
Yep.
landing strip, so you can drop it in some place, nail them together, and the airplane can come in.
Right. But it makes a pretty good base for a roof then.
And we did the same thing to the roof.
Well, how common was it to come under fire, whether mortar fire, rocket fire, artillery?
It wasn't common, but it did happen quite enough to make you realize you needed something. And the only time, we got a new base commander come in, about 4 or 5 months after Tet. And we got a mortar hit on the base. Now, in artillery, you have to have a baseline. You got to know you're at point A and your shell hit at point B. Now, and the thing you want to hit is point C over here, so you can shift protractor work. But without the baseline, you can't do it. He got on the AM radio and gave Charlie a complete hit report. Yes. Our base was at in-country R&R for Big Red One. He had to go to the toilet. If he hadn't had to go and went to the toilet, they didn't have inside plumbing, even in trailers there for the house. They brought up 2 Jeeps with miniguns, 7.62 millimeters. They dropped the roof to the frame. They brought up an APC personnel carrier, backed it up, threw him in, drove him down to the command center, backed it up, pushed him inside to where he couldn't be hit. When we got the C-131 in, they put him in an APC, drove that into the airplane, tied it down, and flew him out of country.
He made that bad an impression.
Well, our base is what we call Cherry. Charlie had no base line.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have a base line, you can move your artillery anywhere you want, and you can know where everything is on base, and then you can draw a new line.
So what exactly did he say over the radio?
He told where every shell hit.
Oh. And why? Was he trying to report back to headquarters? Or what
No,
was
he was trying to calm people down, but he used the wrong entity to do it with.
Mm-hmm.
He used the AM radio, which is not secure.
Right, right.
We got hit a little bit more regular after that.
All right. Now, was it usually mortar fire that they would use
Yeah.
on you? Yeah. I mean, did you ever get rocket attacks, or was that someplace else?
They tried a couple times. As soon as they launched, we had something hitting their launching site and blowing the rockets out of the air. So,
All right. Now, on the base itself, did you have Vietnamese, either civilians or military, working there?
you could go off base from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. But you better be back on base at 6 p.m. We had 3 bad boys from New York, Negroes, gangbangers. They said, they went to get a haircut at 5 o'clock, and they says, well, we won't get it until 6:30. They had a new mouth, all 3. Barbers were gone.
So they don't come back.
If you're off base, it's after 6, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie moves in. Come daylight, he moves out.
Now, did you have civilians working on the base?
Yeah. If they come on and worked on base after 6 p.m., they stayed on base all night. Then they were released. I had a good time running around the little bit of countryside we could. And Vietnam was my best time ever in the service. I've been to other bases, good ones. From Vietnam, I went to Mountain Home Air Force Base, Idaho. Ended up going to another tech school. I had a disagreement with a NCO, and I gave him a physics lesson. We was on the 2nd floor, and we didn't have no landings to go down to the 1st floor to get off the airplanes. And he told me I was going to do something. You don't tell me to do non-military things. You ask me, I might. You tell me, I won't. And he kept giving me bad reports. So one night, he just ticked me off too much. I worked in bars, so I knew how to frog march people. I did that. I frog marched him and tilted him a little bit over the stairs. You want to see the bottom? Do it again. Then I swung him into a wall, went back in the office and sat down. A week later, I was in another tech school.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's back ourselves up again to that year that you spent in Vietnam at Phan Rang. When the Tet Offensive, so you're there when the Tet Offensive starts in early '68. Did your base come under attack at that time?
Everybody did. Everybody. They had tunnels in between the second and third row out. In other words, first row was right base perimeter. 30 feet, second fence. 30 more feet was the third, and they come up between the second and third row. They'd miscalculated in their tunnel. We put the Red One guys knew how to drop a mortar, and they dropped the mortar right down in the tunnel.
So was this an attack that was pretty much over just as it was starting, or did
No,
they get...
it was, you was on high alert for all the Tet season. We flew airplanes like that. This is one of the times where we did a 16-hour day. I mean, we was out in the line 16 hours, not 16 hours from time wake up to go to sleep. And our normal day was 12 hours, 6 days a week. Sometimes you go to 14, but when you start doing 14, even 6 hours a day, 2 or 3 weeks, you get so wore out. One day you wake up refreshed. You knew you had your day off.
All right.
They couldn't wake you up.
All right. But when the Tet offensive started, when your base came under attack, I guess, but the actual physical direct attack on the base did not last very long?
No, because we had 105s, we had Big Red One, they had their military equipment there.
Now, were you being attacked initially by sappers or guys trying to blow you up, or regular troops?
People trying to get on base to do nasty stuff.
Right.
But they miscalculated, and they come up between 2 and 3, and they was trying to come up under and come up behind 1. They didn't, nobody made it on the base.
Okay. So basically they got spotted as they came up.
They popped up, and then whoops. We dropped a 80 millimeter mortar down the hole. High fragmentation.
And then were they trying to bombard the base at the same time or use mortars?
They tried, but this is before they had a base line.
Right.
And we had a Red Horse Army construction outfit on base constantly, and they would go in, and when they got done with a flat line, you couldn't tell where the mortar had chipped the concrete, where it didn't, because they would dye the concrete, so you couldn't tell the difference. There was no light and dark, where on the highway you'll see where they've taken it out. But they made it so it just looked like it was. So they had no one, and we know Charlie sent people in on base with the workers. We weren't that dumb. But there was no way they could spot where they'd hit.
Right. Because they weren't in a place to see it, and they couldn't report back the way you were set
And
up.
if they could see any of it, they couldn't tell the difference of what had been hit and what hadn't been hit. There was no new, looked all old.
Right. Okay. Now another thing you mentioned about when you arrived at Phan Rang, they had a pretty rapid turnover of most of the personnel.
This is a yearly turnover.
Right.
Whole complete squadron in 30 days from the bottom all the way up to the top. But you got 10 days to get the bottom troops used to doing all the stuff, knowing where to go, what to do, how to do it. Then you go to the NCOs, senior NCOs. New ones come in, they learn everything. Then when they get that done, the officers are the final area, they're gone. New ones in. So when the new officers come in, they don't come in with a green outfit. Sure, we're not ripe yet, but we're not green. People do most work, we all know what we got to do and how to do it.
Right. Now, but you went in as an individual to join the unit.
Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of you all coming in at the same time, pretty much. Now, did that work well in terms of creating sort of a cohesion within the unit?
Yeah.
You guys all know each other?
No, we got to know each other there.
Right.
But since I hadn't been in long enough, and I found after a while, and my son's finding this out, after you've been in 8 to 10 years, you can't go to a place and not run into somebody who knew somebody that you knew, or you knew them, or they run. You know, it's just the military. The best way to say it is a very big, small town.
Mhm.
The longer you're in, the more you know people, different jobs, different things. But Phan Rang, I wasn't that high up. I was there approximately 6-7 years after I was there 67, so it's five. I got there at the end of my fifth year and left at the end of my 6th year. So I hadn't built out the knowledge of people, and I loved it. And with the 352nd, we worked with the munitions people. If we had to get airplanes up, we didn't say, well, that's my job, don't you do it. We'd say, if you can do this, like when they was caulking the guns, the 50 cals on the airplanes, they had to take a panel off. Well, inside that panel were 3 bottles with a gauge. Either the needle was in the green or the red. Now, they couldn't service the bottles, but they could tell me green or red.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have to go back up there, put the panel on, lock it down. Now, I could run a jammer that could lift the bombs up to the rack, they'd attach it. You know, why make a guy that's got a skill do a mundane job that you can do? We worked as teams. We split each group in half, so we'd hit 2 airplanes at the same time, and we'd just leapfrog like this all the way down. Normally it was 6, no more than 8, and the people would look. Most of when this had happened, we'd get some high-ranked officers. They had to have fly-in time, combat time. And 614, 615, when they were supposed to be the ready squadrons, would crap out. Call on the 352nd. Our chocks were empty of munitions. Our airplanes were not topped off. 30 minutes later, they were locked, loaded, and moving out.
So you basically had a higher performance level than the other 2 squadrons who were there.
Much higher. We didn't have turf. This is mine. Don't you step on my turf. No. It was a job that needed to be done. We did it. Mm-hmm. We did what we could. I could spin a fuse in. That's like screwing in a big boat. I couldn't arm it. But why make the guy doing the arming? I'm standing there like putting liquid oxygen. I had to watch it till it filled up. I'd have 2 pylons, from 2 to 6 bombs on it. Hey, I'm over there. I can spin. We'll watch it until I see it dripping out.
All right. Well, this approach that you're using of sort of working together and taking advantage of your skills, was this something basically that the enlisted men kind of came up with on their own?
We did it. It was a serendipitous thing. We decided, hey, let's work together instead of against each other.
So that was something. So was that something that you learned from the other guys when you came in, or did your group just start doing it?
It was like everybody else. Everybody changes at the same time. Mm-hmm. Munitions did it a month before us, so they'd have their base there before the mechanics come in and change. So, you know, we all had the same basic format, but they would do it different months. So you'd have trained crews on hand. And there was nothing wrong with doing something you could do to help somebody get the job done quicker. And that was the whole idea. We said, it's got to be done. We've got to work together. Whether we work singly or together, it's going to be done. So why climb up on an airplane, undo a panel that this guy was there at, and the gauge was marked green or red. If it was in the green, it was okay. If it was in red, I had to charge it.
Now, did the officers in the unit understand what you were doing? Were they aware of it?
Our major and the captain. We had a couple of Louis. They didn't know much. But they'd come out, shake their head, turn around, and go back. As long as there was no animosity, the job was being done 100% correctly. Mm-hmm. We worked together as a unit.
Right.
Half half mechanics, half munitions, get one plane done.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, do you have much contact at all with the pilots, or were they just kind of a separate group of people?
They were separate. They come in whenever we'd say, cocked and loaded. They'd bring the pilots out in a van, air conditioned, of course. They'd climb up, climb in, we'd buckle them in, get it started, get the modus there to start them up, get them started, move the modus out, kick the chocks out of the way and marshal them out, and send them off.
So you don't otherwise have much contact with them or interaction with them?
No. The Air Force is quite easier about contact between officer and enlisted man. But there's still, there's this line, you don't push the line, because then they have to do something. We can get along, we got to know each other at times, but we didn't fraternize with each other. The officers didn't come to the NCO club, we didn't go to the officer club.
Right. Okay. Now you were there during a particularly intense period of activity. I mean, even before TET, there was a lot going on with the search and destroy missions.
We was flying. Like I said, our normal day was 12 hours, 6 day. Then we'd go to 14, 6 day, 14, 7 day.
Mm-hmm.
And when it really got bad, we went to 16, 7 day. So there was always at least 2 time period groups overlapping each other. I mean, the guys come in and they'd get with you, find out what's going on, and they'd get going. Finally, when everything was going, the new group would come in and you'd go back.
Right.
But,
Now, were the aircraft, were they taking battle damage or just physically breaking down, or what was happening to them?
Physical. It was just old age. You're talking planes built in the middle to late 50s, and they'd done their time. But I've seen some things happen, and I don't believe anything when people say these aircraft can't do something. Because I've seen an F-100, which should not be able to fly with a 2-foot diameter hole in the middle of the wing. It don't like getting off the ground when it's got a whole wing there. But the guy knew what he had to do. He's an excellent pilot. Brought it in. Got it in. We took things out of it. What was left of the airframe, we moved over to the fire pits for the fire people to train on.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen things happen that till that base couldn't be done. One time I was running the modus, get an airplane to start up, and the modus caught fire. So I was swinging out of the cab to jump to the ground to go pull the cable, and then I was going to drive the whole unit, cables dragging and all. Guy had saw the smoke coming out of it. He grabbed the cable, flipped it, hit my ankle, dislocating it. Now you're talking a bundle of 3 wires as thick as your thumb. Twisted copper, so you know it's heavy. Another guy had disconnected the air unit. When I went down on my hands, I said, bye, I'm not. Because we had napes on inboard, blueies on outboard. Blueies were anti-personnel bomblets. In other words, when they drop, it'd be little bouncing Betty softballs. And there's no place you can hide from them when they go kaboom. Because they got spikes 360 degrees in any direction you want to go. There ain't none of this, well, if I can get in the, that spikes it went down.
Right. So basically you had a vehicle that was on fire that was carrying napalm and these other things?
No, in front of this.
Oh, it was just piled up in front of it, okay.
Yeah. Well, when you're running a modus, starting an aircraft, you have to have one guy in the cab watching the gauges, making sure everything's going right. And I'm looking in the mirror, and I saw smoke coming out. Uh-oh, time to get this baby out. And they said a guy had to run to catch me because I was gone. I'm on my hands and knees. I did things that under normal conditions are physically impossible to do. I wish I could do some of them. Standing high jump, 24 feet. We had a regiment full of guys. We heard a rumble, which meant a bomblet was coming out of this unit. When it went clunk, it didn't do its thing, it just clunked. You could hear the crickets because there wasn't a body around. We disappeared. I mean, some of us went like me. I went up. You have these revetments, 24 foot steel walls. You know, they're angled. They come down, then flat, then back in. And I cleared the top of that and flattened my body down. And like I said, I've seen things over there that we used to have a pilot that was, we hated him because he was guaranteed one main tire change every time he landed, if not more. Charlie trained him how to land a 100 smooth. He had fired a 20 millimeter HE, high explosive shell, went up the intake, up through the electronics bay without hitting anything. Went into the instrument panel and lodged there, right in front of his face.
So he can see the tip of a shell sitting there?
He can see the color. HEs are powder blue, robin's egg blue. And this is in the middle of his panel. So if it hits hard, they're made to explode upon impact. And why this one didn't do it, don't know. He put that plane down. I couldn't believe it. Picture perfect. Just a tiny puff on the wheels. Let it go down there and dropped it. And he actually did his drawers. He just filled his drawers. I would have too.
So do the munitions guys have the job of taking the shell out?
No. They don't even come close. They come out and de-arm the aircraft. Then we take the canopy off. Then we take the seat out. And I told the instrument guys, now, you have a choice. You can go in there and disconnect all the connections to your instruments, and you won't have any problem putting a new panel in. If I go in, you'll probably spend 3 to 6 months to get that plane back in working condition. Because I'm not even getting close to the instrument. 18 inches back, I'm with dikes cutting everything. And it's held in with, 36 Zeus fasteners. Now they describe these. They look like a slotted screw, but they're not. It's a spring snap lock. And I had to push that in, turn it, and bring it back out without it snapping. Under normal conditions, you just let them pop. I'm in there with my flak jacket on backwards. I have since learned it wouldn't have done me any good because it's still taking my head off. I got it free. I hooked wires to the Zeus fasteners. A guy with a crane, I got off of that airplane, and I had a light line to the front of the panel, and I'm over behind the tail pulling it, and he's lifting, so it come out. We built a 36-inch diameter sandbag pit. Then we put that planking and put more. Against that HE, we put a 1/4 pound of C4 with the wires coming out. And it nearly lifted that stupid thing up. Then when they wanted the instruments, I just I went and had it cleaned off. I swept all the remains, put them in a box, and we got a letter that it was combat damage, non-serviceable.
Right.
Got all that stuff. Got my letters and everything, and I took this over to display. Here's your instrument panel with the instruments. 2 foot by 2 foot box. Shreds.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the things I remember from now. The rest of the time I'm in the service is working with guys and stuff, and I did good.
Mm-hmm. Now, while you were in Vietnam, did you ever get sort of R&R, or you get to go off base?
I went once to Bangkok, and I was going to go to Japan, but we had an alert pop up. Sorry, nobody's leaving. We got to have everybody here. We got to just. It was up near the Vietnamese border. We had to fly planes. Sorry, your leave, your R&R is canceled. By the time it was done, didn't have enough time to take the R&R.
Yeah. Well, when you went to Bangkok, what was it like to go to a place where there was not a war going on after having been in the middle of that base?
You could relax. You didn't have to worry about bad guy being 1 chair over or 2 chairs over. You was always on edge when you left the base. You had to be. Because I'm still trying to figure out what the man upstairs walked for, because I had a pineapple hand grenade thrown into my lap. It didn't go off. It went one direction, I went the other, and I'm still trying to figure out how I put my body through a hole that's steel rimmed, smaller than my body. But I went through it, and I was gone. The right incentive, you can do almost anything you want.
So that was a time when you were off the base, and
I was off base downtown, getting on a little putt-putt cab to come back to base.
Mm-hmm.
And when the grenade hit the wall, it bounced in, and when it hit the second time on the ground, it exploded.
Mm-hmm.
There was no person to be seen, or not even a GI.
Mm-hmm.
It was a ghost town. And they talk about IEDs. Vietnamese did the same thing. They'd take a bicycle and pack that with C4, open the frame up, pack it, and close it over and not weld it, but close it so it looked like it was still.
Yeah.
You're talking about 3 or 4 pounds of C4 going off against the wall. So the blast comes out this way.
Now, did the men in your unit, the mechanics or people like that, did you take in any combat casualties while you were there?
No, we was all in non-combat situations. Didn't say that we didn't receive some.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in a secure base in a combat area. Things will happen. But our main job was to make sure the ground guys had working aircraft with munitions on them coming in.
Right. Now, did you talked a little bit about some of the missions and things that people flew out of the bases. Did you get much by way of reports or information on what they were doing?
Nope. Classified, period. Don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
Even if we knew the officer, don't ask. He can't tell you, and if you ask, he's got to tell on you.
So how much did you know about what was going on with the war while you were there?
Oh, we knew quite a bit. We had, like I said, Big Red 1, we were their in-country R&R base. They could go to the, drive to a cove where they could go swimming, and some native girls there. We had the Aussies, Canberras, in the Air Force parlance, that's a B-57, 2-engine. So we'd had sources of information, and it wasn't like we was deaf and dumb. We didn't know anything was going on. And we, we kept up. We had the military paper, the Stars and Stripes, and we had some of the radio programs we get on the Arvin radio. Nothing controversial, of course.
But you wouldn't know necessarily what operation you were supporting or where the planes were going.
That was strictly not a need to know. We just had needed to know we need to get this airplane, have it ready, and let it fly. Take care of it when it come back, and don't ask what they did.
Now, did you have only F-100s the whole time?
Yeah, there's strictly F-100.
All right. Now, are there other particular events or things that happened during that year that kind of stand out in your memory that you can add here?
Oh, when Puff come online. Or do you know what I'm saying when I say Puff?
I do, but the audience might not, so why don't you explain it?
The armed C-47, what they would take is an old C-47, and we change it to an AC-47. They would put Gatling guns transverse to the fuselage so the nose is sticking out. And watch them at night and you see this big red arc coming down to the ground. Now there's one thing about that red arc. Only every fifth bullet does that. So when you're seeing it coming down steady like that, it was one heck of a heavy rate of fire.
So it looks effectively, the tracer light makes it look like there's sort of a solid beam going down already. And so that's only 1 out of 5, making that thing that already looks solid. So you're really chewing up whatever is on the ground below it.
Well, the easiest way to explain what an AC-47 could do. Take a football field, plus both end zones. Mark it into 1-inch squares. In 3 minutes, every square would have a bullet in it. It's not like you see in the old movies of World War II where a guy's firing and a bullet hits here and then hits here and then hits there. This is a buzzsaw. And that's what it sounds like when it fires.
So they were using it close enough to your base that you could see what it was doing.
We could see it. We knew where to look. We'd be heads up if you're on night, look over in this area, you might see something. Army guys would give us a heads up. They wouldn't tell us exactly. They'd say, look over to the northeast area. Watch it every now and then when you get a chance. You'd see them. And they'd land and get serviced and take off again. So they'd get back to their main base. They'd get low on gas, so they'd have to come up and suck some avgas into it. And one of them came in, was older than I was. I mean, the airframe was built in 1942, a year older than me. And here we changed it from a cargo plane to a combat aircraft. And then when they went up, took the C-119s and AC them, nasty aircraft. Those were the ones, when we got them online, we gave the puff to the Vietnamese and the other countries around there. And the AC-119 carried 275 recoilless in the tail, 4 20-mil Gatlings, and next to them another pair of recoilless rifles. So they get you from the side or get you from the tail. And Charlie hated him because you couldn't hear him. But if they spotted him, the whole area was saturated.
Now, were they using those while you were still there? Or did they bring those in later?
They were just coming in. They was just coming in. So I knew about them, but...
Okay. Now, as your time there, as your year was kind of coming to a close, were you starting to count down the days until you left?
Oh, man, anybody worth his salt had his 100-day calendar. As soon as you hit the 100 days, you had the calendar up, marking it off.
And did people's behavior change at all as they got toward the end, or?
Well, everybody was packing up and getting ready to go, and we was waiting for our replacement body.
Right.
As soon as your replacement body come in, you was gone.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have enough bunks to have two groups there. And they did it in a steady enough flow, so there was no, on an average, towards the last 10 to 20 days of your time there, they'd bring in a group of 20 guys, and when they would land, 20 guys from the base would load up on that and be gone.
Okay. Now, you had some guys leaving before you did?
Some before, some after.
So when the new guys come in to replace those other men, did you start working to train them, to teach them what to do?
That's an axiomatic thing. They had to be trained.
Mm-hmm.
They had to be shown some of the things. What happened to the 352nd after I left? I don't know. I know it's deactivated. And I know one thing, and I've learned since. In a war zone, you're the best or the worst. There's no mediocre, don't have time to be. So, the guys I was with there are the best group of guys I've ever been with.
Mm-hmm.
I can't hardly even remember any of the names, but I remember what we've done, things we did. And while I was recovering from my dislocated ankle, I was put in temporarily in charge of non-powered equipment, age equipment, aerospace, ground equipment. It's only supposed to be temporary the last 4 months I was there, but the NJOC that I was working under got an emergency that he had to fly back to the States, and he only had 90 days left, so they weren't going to bring him back. So I got stuck with age till I left.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a trader. I know how to do things. And I got given a glorious trading package. I had ordered 36 rolls of 3-inch wide reflective tape. I got 3 rolls of 36-inch wide reflective tape, non-returnable stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody needed to put a number on their vehicle, they'd come to me, "Whoa, what do we got to trade here?"
Mm-hmm.
I had the best spray guns, I had the best air compressors, because every age equipment have to have a reflective number on it. The fire trucks, my fire bottles were prime, pristine. They come down, they need 2 feet by a foot wide, cut a number out. Okay. I even ended up with a cargo container to lock my stuff up in. Where before I just had a wood shack.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't keep people out. But I did that the last 90 days I was there, took care of non-powered age. Wanted to get back to my airplanes, but I wasn't able because there's nobody to take over.
Mm-hmm.
They flew a guy in about when I was down to 45 days, so as NCO, so I could show him the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last 30 days I was back on the flight line, but when you're down to 30 days.
All right. So now, when did you get back to the States then?
September of '68.
Okay. And do they give you leave when you come home? Or what happens?
Anytime you transfer, you have opportunity for leave. If you have the time, you can borrow, but you can only borrow up to 15 days.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm in country for 12 months. I can't take leave. There's 30 days that I've earned. And I came back and I landed in Seattle. And I wanted to do something that I had heard done. I circumvented the United States, went down the west coast to near the Mexican border, all the way across and down into through Texas, up, down into Florida, back up to Maine, back down, and across the top of the United States to my base. Only I didn't complete the last 600 miles on that trip. I was 600 miles from my home, which would have connected back to the Seattle route. I did that later when I had my new car.
All right. Now, where did you get sent after, once you finished the leave and so forth, where did you go next?
Mountain Home Air Force Base,
Okay.
Idaho.
So that's your 600 miles short part.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get all the way back
I
home.
lived 600 miles west.
Right.
You give me a 3-day break, take me less, it'd be 10 and a half, 11 hours, and I'd be on the coast. Give me a 6-hour nap, run around with my friends for one day, take a 6-hour break, drive back.
What did you notice when you got back to the States after being in Vietnam for a year? Did you notice any changes in terms of people's attitudes toward the war, or soldiers, or things like
college kids. And again, it's because the inept politicians we had. And the one guy I trusted when I did some backtracking on him, Walter Cronkite, I thought was an honest, straight-up dude. He was the worst pit viper in the pack, because people trusted his word. And he lied. That really burned my tail. I had to be careful when I was around college towns, because they were going to go after anything military. And those of us that went to Vietnam, we paid a price. We had no welcome, and I still am angry over that. I mean, we went out to do what we had to do, and you have no right to tell us what we did. Walter Cronkite would cherry pick the news scenes. He never showed what we was doing for good. He always showed what we was doing bad. We did more good than bad. We helped with building schools when we had time off. We tried to interact with the local people. But the news back home, there's only, we was going, gunning down everybody we saw, blowing everything up. Yeah, I felt sorry for that little girl in that scene from the napalm. But Charlie was there. And he always hid behind the civilians. It wasn't stupid. We had places we couldn't hit. Guess where Charlie was? Right where we couldn't hit.
Right.
They had it wasn't a Buddhist temple, but it was one of these 1,200-year-old temples that had been built and then abandoned. He was in there. That was his munition storage.
Right.
But we couldn't hit it. Then they stopped the B-52 raids. We had them broken if they hadn't stopped the raids. As soon as they found out we'd only go this far, they knew they had us. And this is the one thing I have against where we're at right now. I'm happy to say they're not micromanaging like they did in Nam, but there's still too much political management. Let the military do the military job that we're trained to do. We tie our hands or tie our feet, we can't do the job. And we will be beaten.
Well, at that point, and it still goes on. The problem with a lot of these wars is there's what you're trying to accomplish politically, so that has to happen, but the military has to be able to do their job, and figuring out how to fit them together is something that's never worked very well.
You've got to do just like World War II. Go in there and decimate. Then help the people rebuild. Look at Germany and Japan, our two best allies. But what did we do to their country before we went back? We destroyed it. we wiped it off the map. I mean, look at pictures of Berlin, Bremerhaven, Frankfurt. There was not a solid house there. Everything was roofless and usually one or two walls gone. Everything in big piles of rubble. You have to go in and win the war first, then come in and do the politics. Don't go in trying to do the politics while you're fighting, because you're going to make us lose. And we're not losing as bad as we did in Vietnam, thank goodness, because that's one of the things I've written to my senators and to my congressmen. Don't put us into another Vietnam situation, because if you do, I know enough of other vets that we're going to come out and you will not like what we're going to do. Because I see World War II, they're not angry. Koreans are a little bit angry. That was the start of tying the hands for political reasons. But when you hit the Vietnam, we're angry because we were punished for not doing the job and not allowed to do the job.
And you're punished for decisions that you never made.
Decisions that we couldn't make.
Yeah.
We didn't have the choices. The only thing I wish we had back in Nam was what we got today. It was the last aircraft I helped bring into the Air Force inventory in 1977, the A-10. Oh, our ground man loves that airplane. Pilots love it because they're well protected. They sit in a titanium bathtub. When they eject, bathtub and all goes from the airplane.
Okay, let's move ourselves back here to your military career. How long did you stay in the Air Force after you got back from Vietnam?
Oh, I got back in '68 and wasn't discharged till '80.
Okay, and then what kinds of duties did you have then during the rest of that time?
Starting with Mountain Home right after coming back, I was an aircraft mechanic. And like I said, I had the disagreement with a certain NCO. And the way the Air Force does, they will separate you. They sent me to test school, and he was due to re-enlist, and his re-enlistment papers were withdrawn. He was not allowed to re-enlist. Most people don't understand. You have to be given the invitation to re-enlist, or else you cannot re-enlist. And you have to request retirement. Retirement is not automatic. I know a guy that was discharged for 26 years and no retirement. He was unable to ask for it because his kid did something overseas. And while you're overseas, you have a little contract you sign. And that contract locks and loads you, because if your family messes up, your career is gone. And that's what happened to me. The same thing. Not the same way, but for the same contract. It says you're wholly and or totally responsible for any and or all of your actions by your dependents. In other words, if they mess up, you're gone. I fought and I got to Jimmy Carter's desk. I wasn't due to be reviewed until January 27th. Day before Thanksgiving, I was told I had 6 days to depart base. That was a clean job of a desk. Getting rid of everybody.
Let's fill in a little bit what goes on between. What other places did you serve then?
Well, from Mountain Home, I went to Germany, and I was there for 4 years. Originally, I was there for 3. We had our 18-month party, the home party. You go out and party like crazy. I'm here 18 months, now I'm on the downhill glide. The next evening, we was back in there crying in our drinks because the next day we were extended 12 more months. I went from 18 to 30.
Right. What base were you at in Germany?
Bitburg Air Base, Germany. And if you look back in time, this was the air base that President Reagan went to, where they had the big hussy fit over an SS graveyard off to the side, which had nothing to do with what he was doing.
Right.
But they wanted to cause a fracas. So he's going by an SS barrel. He didn't
A lot of the World War II vets didn't like the SS very much.
No. It wasn't the World War II vets that were upset. It was the way that the news was broadcasting it, like he was going to go and lay flowers there. No, he was going to buy it. There was no other way. The road went by it, so he had to go down the road, so he went by it.
Right. Okay. But as far as a place to be stationed was that a good assignment?
Oh, that was an excellent base, excellent base. That's where got to know my ex-wife, got married, brought her over. And then when we got done, I was from Germany. I went to Griffiths Air Force Base, Rome, New York. That was where they had the hippie party too. I can't think of
Woodstock?
Woodstock too was at that base. From there, we had lost a child, and I had some just was not a place for me to stay, so they reassigned me to Spokane, Washington Air Base there. I was there, and we had another child. Got orders in 76 to late 76, sent me back to RAF Bentwaters. I'd been there before. And I should have known something was wrong with the troubles I was having, but I didn't. And when I found out, I exploded. Personal stuff that I will not bring out, but it was what destroyed my career. And it involved family, and that's the ones that get you the worst. Now, I'll be honest with you, when I was discharged, I was angry, to put it mildly. I'm still upset about it, but I'm not angry anymore. They did what they had to do.
Now, what kind of work did you go into after you left the Air Force?
I didn't, because when I left the Air Force, I had tried to get medical, which I'm still fighting for, because I messed my back up. Really, totally decimated my back at Rome. Griffiths Air Force Base. I bent over and ripped every muscle in my spine, laterally across the back, at the hips. And within a year, I was in pain. And it's been getting worse over time. I do the exercises I can, but I'm limited. And when you go to a job and say, I can't stand for 2 hours, I can't bend, I can't twist, I can't lift over 40 pounds. Who's going to hire you? And when you're angry, I was angry. I mean, no way to hide the fact I was angry. It took me 8 years of mental health, non-government, so there's no paper trail. I found out don't ever use Uncle Sam because leave a paper trail. If he wants to do something, he's going to use it to kill you. Took me 7 years. I had gotten married just before my discharge. I said, I married my wife in November of 80. I says, I ain't going to be reviewed until late January, almost February. Here I'm at the bed. All of a sudden, I'm just newly married to my second wife. We're still married. Suddenly, I had to leave. So, which upset me no end.
So how did you get by then? Could she work, or what did you do?
She had a job she could do for a while. I got odd jobs here and there. I could never get anything permanent. finally in, what was it, 85, I was able to get a hold of the program and go back to school. And normally, what the trade I had going to school, electronics, they were crying for them.
Mm-hmm.
But my bad luck was when I graduated, IBM and 2 or 3 other big electronics firms slipped down, dumped all these experienced people out.
Right.
So who are you going to hire? A guy with 5 years experience and knowledge, or this guy you're going to have to train and cost you $5,000?
So how'd you wind up in Michigan?
My wife is from Michigan. She's up, and then her parents live up behind Crystal Lake, Benson and Beulah area, south of Traverse City.
Right.
And the wife and I, we have 2 sons. Like I said, my oldest boy's in the Air Force. He's been in over 10 years now. Loves it. My youngest son just got married. So I'm still trying a few things to get things straightened out, but I got to go dig through some records and get cherry-picked papers to prove my stuff. And I've got a civilian x-rays that show I do have a small curvature, but where it's at is a major point, right at the hips. Guess what comes out at the hips? The leg nerve. And every now and then I hear a click. I know I have one of 2 choices: get down or fall down. But there's nothing else, because when I hear that click, my legs go to rubber. It pinches the nerves, so there's no nerves messages coming down. Muscles can't bunch up and hold, and they can't release. So if I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. I don't count much anymore. That's part of my anger, is that they really diss me, and then they just won't do nothing. I get a small pension because of my face, but they owe me a lot more. They owe me a lot more. And you learn in the military, right early quick, it's all or nothing. And like in war, no in between. It's all or nothing, and I got the nothing.
All right. It's clear that you kind of went through a lot in the service of your country and on our behalf. It actually has made for still actually a very good story that you've told us very well. If you look back on the whole experience of being in the Air Force, aside from sort of the physical effects of it, how do you think that wound up affecting you or shaping you or whatever?
It gave me a lot of knowledge and stuff. I tried using that knowledge, but because I had no college degree in it, I was 11 years of maintenance management. I walked into a place, I says, guy was interviewing me, and I says, show me something that you need to be more productive. Because the training I got, I could work from shoes to aircraft. It didn't matter. You're using an entity. And you go in and look and see where, if you change this, it'll move faster this way. I went in, I redid one of his production lines that was not producing as good as it should. Became highly productive. And then he hired the college kid. It took 2 years to train to get to the bottom of my skill. But he wouldn't hire me because I didn't have a college degree. That was during the time when I had a lot of anger, and I told him where he was, what he was, and a few other things, and left. Wasn't a smart thing to do, but hey, I was angry. I mean, here I come in. I physically show you what I can do. I'm not a dummy. Just because I don't have a piece of paper to hang on the wall. And that was my job in the service, to keep production running smoothly. The last 11 years I was in maintenance management. scheduling, whether it was scheduling airplanes to fly or making sure the shops ran smoothly, putting out what was needed to be repaired to go back up to the airplanes. And I loved it. In management field, in the service, is a burnout field. You go into it and you either become a cinder or you become a piece of steel. And most is cinder because you're under stress. The top is looking down at you. The bottom doesn't like what you're doing. And you're the center of a target. Everybody shoots at you, although you're not causing the problem. And as long as I do my job, nobody knows. But if I fail, everybody knows. And the thing was, that's what we liked. We didn't mind the scheduling. The majority of the guys that were in the field with me were made stronger, but we did have some that were what we call shaky jakes, afraid to make a move because they're afraid to make somebody angry. Me, don't like it, write a letter. He won't do what I say, I'll write a letter. And twice in 11 years, I had to go to my boss, who was the number 2 man. This was a colonel, not a major or an LC, a full bull. And both times he did the same thing. The different men did the same thing. When the people come in, they saw me sitting beside the desk, not in front of the desk, beside the desk, with my elbow on the desk and my hand holding my chin. You know what that tells you? Your grass and the lawnmower's coming. Non-verbal instructions. And you don't do that in no colonel's office, no time. But I was told to do this. He wanted this. He wanted them to know. He knew what was going on. Then I was told to leave. Didn't have very many problems after that.
Right. What do you think now of the way the public and the media presents the soldiers, the people who are serving in Iraq and Afghanistan? Do you see a shift or a difference from what you got?
They're treating them better than they did us, but they're still not treating them right. I'm happy to see them come back instead of angry crowds, happy crowds, but if you look, it's almost all relative to them. Anybody that's bad is kept away. Where when I came back, they come right into our face. A couple of them, they had problems breathing. I can't understand why. They were saying things to me, and I looked at them, and they dropped down to the ground trying to breathe.
But when your son comes back from duty in the Air Force, people see him in a uniform.
They see him in uniform, they see him around, they know him. My son did 4 years of ROTC at Central. And that was a shock. Because I didn't recommend it, I didn't tell him he couldn't, I didn't tell him he could. But he used me as a source of information about military protocol. And it gave him a 2-pay grade jump when he got done with boot camp. I'd tell any kid who's thinking of service, get into ROTC. That means dollars in your pocket before you even start out. And my son, it makes me extremely proud. Most people look at rank as dollar signs. They don't look at the corollary. The more money you make, the more responsibility you have. And he says, until I'm ready to take on that responsibility, I will not take the test. When he first passed up staff, I yelled at him and stuff. He says, Dad, I'm not ready for the responsibilities of that rank. And I tell you, that made me extremely proud. He looked at what the physical cost, not what he's going to get into the bank, but what he has to do. And what he does can affect a man's career. And the higher you rank, the more you have to do this type of stuff.
Sure.
I'm proud that he thinks before he jumps. Because I've seen too many guys burn out when they find out they've been promoted to the point of incompetence. You can't demote them because they've done nothing wrong. They just can't do their job.
Right.
And that's the military, and I found out civil service. You promote somebody till they become incompetent. And you can't demote them.
All right. So you certainly learned a good deal over the course of time, one way or another, both in the military and out of it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to add to the record here before we close out the interview?
No. Try to get yourself in a good field, but don't count on things being the same when you start and come out at the end. Because I've done training and field I went into, needed people, graduated 3 years later, and the field got dumped. Experienced out in the field, so. But don't reject the chance to go to school, because you'll get stuff from that school, whether you're able to get a job with it, that will help you. I'll be honest, I didn't think I would ever say it, but I would love to be able to go back to school. I just like the interaction, the reading, and I hate to say it, even the writing.
There you go. You could take one of my classes yet. Reading and writing we do a lot of.
Well, I had to take one course, and the teacher made me the person that helps everybody else. Government. Well, when you're in the military and you're E5 or above, you take classes. You learn what you can do, what you can't do, what you need to do, and what you should never do. And you get this yearly. So, government class, that was a lark. It was made 4.0 and didn't work at all. And if I ever go back to college, I don't have to take the stupid stuff, the English, the government, and all that. I just couldn't get the money when I got down here. Just couldn't connect up with the stuff. I had wanted to switch over to accounting because I like numbers. And I understand accounting because in management you do accounting. You don't do it as hard as a bean counter, but I was never able to get the money to go to do those classes. They would want me to take a class to get a job. And like I said, with my impediments, not disability, I'm not disabled, I'm impaired. And you can never convince me I'm disabled. I'm challenged, I work within that area, but it makes it difficult to get work. I'm on Social Security now because of my age. I would love to get a job, but I can't. Nobody wants to hire a 65-year-old impaired man. Bones shifting.
All right. I think that pretty well wraps up what we're doing here today. I just want to thank you for coming in and talking to me and sharing the stories and help filling in another piece of a much bigger picture for us.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
That'll
thank
be a
you.
wrap.